That was a college student having a debate with his lecturer, who was an atheist, about the origins of life and the universe. And it was a philosophy class. It was actually from a film which came out recently. But the point is, number one, scientists no longer believe that the universe is steady state. The majority of cosmologists believe that the whole universe, space and time itself, wasn't a blob of rock that exploded into space. No, space itself didn't exist, time didn't exist, matter and energy didn't exist. A singularity, there was nothing, absolutely nothing. And into this nothing, everything came within a very tiny amount of time. And as the believer in the video pointed out, that's exactly what you would expect if there was an infinite being. Not energy, not mass, but something beyond this physical world, a person, a designer, who has a purpose for people's lives, who wants people to live a reasonable life, who likes them, who's kind, who's very forgiving, who likes all people, who expects all people to change and search for him. Originally Edwin Hubble, he found out and discovered, to shake cosmology about 100 years ago, that all the galaxies were moving away from each other. And more recently, in about the 90s, they documented that they're actually accelerating away from each other. No one knows why. They call it dark energy, but they don't really understand. It's just a name for we don't know what it is. And they don't know how the galaxies hold together. There's not enough mass. They call it dark matter. It's just a name for we don't know what it is. They haven't got exact proof of it. But for some reason, the whole universe is expanding. And so they run the tape back and assume that it came from a single point, and certainly the maths and there's other evidences that seem to suggest that's what happened. Now, it's interesting today, people say it's the Big Bang or gods. That wasn't how it was when the Big Bang was first discovered by Edwin Hubble and the science that followed. In fact, Einstein realized his maths pointed towards the universe not being a steady state and it coming from nothing, and he put in a fudge factor to change the cosmological constant so that it actually steadied it out. After Edwin Hubble found the proof of an expanding universe, Einstein said it was the biggest mistake of his career, that he had actually put in this fudge factor, and he said it came from nothing. Again, in normal life, we don't see suddenly out of nothing things appearing, but the evolutionists, atheists, want to make a small exception to that, namely the entire universe. Some people with faith would say, hey, I said a prayer and this small thing changed. And people without faith will laugh and say, hey, you can't see a blind person have their retina that tiny retina healed by a little prayer. But the atheists believe that not just a retina, but everyone's retina and all the atoms behind the eye and the entire universe just came into being out of nothing. So that's interesting. So I think that personally the atheists have more faith than believers. When we look at evolution in high school, you're often shown these photos of different embryos, and when I was at school, all the missing links that were the icons of evolution have since been disproved, and whenever they seem to find a new transitional form or one of the millions of required missing links, not the missing link, it's millions required, as we showed earlier, they always say it's always big news. Science has found the missing link. Well, didn't they do that last year when you put that on the news? But when they find out that it's proven not to be what they thought it was, they don't put that in the news. So there seems to be a media bias between the science of intelligent design and the science of evolution. They seem to be biased towards genetic mutations accounting for the development of complex life. It's interesting as well, when they're arguing, they talk about the plan and the miracle of evolution and the creative power. Hold on a minute, power and miracle and plan. You don't believe in those things. How can you use those words, miracle? You don't believe in miracles. You only believe in the physical universe, naturalistic approach. Why should we? Even now with the Big Bang, what they're saying is that, come back to embryo in a moment, they're saying that everything coming out of nothing. Well, there has to be another dimension, another universe, something else. Well, isn't that what theologians and religious people all along, philosophers, have said? You know, that's what they said. There's something else out there. There is purpose, there is intelligence, there's someone that's keeping control of this universe, who holds all things, who stretched it out for a purpose. Coming back lastly to the comparative embryology, or looking at the embryos of different species and phyla and animals at early stages, and comparing them and saying, well, they look the same. Well, one, looking at the two-dimensional photos doesn't say anything about the genes. It's the genetic code that we should compare to see if it's reasonable that one went from one to another. By the way, when going back to Bill Yates, going back to Microsoft, when Microsoft want to move from Windows 10 to Windows 11, wrong numbers, but Windows 10 to Windows 11, Windows 7 to Windows 8, do they employ toddlers, 1-year-olds, with hammers on the keyboards to bang in at random on the keyboard to hopefully create some new functionality on their package? When they reboot, would it work? Oh, no, I think if they put toddlers that put code in at random, just a few places that they take it out, it would have a virus and it wouldn't work at all. It's so complex, Microsoft Windows. You mess it up a little bit, you get a virus in here and there, and you have to reinstall Windows. It doesn't work. No, they do not employ toddlers or random processes or take a magnet to the hard drive. No, they employ the most brilliant computer minds, computer programmers, to think, huge teams, hundreds of them. To get new functionality, you need lots of intelligence, and then you reboot and you have touch sensitive, you have different functionality, mouse pads with 5 fingers that you can touch, etc. So, you know, how can we believe that this complexity comes from random processes? Other people say, well, you've got to look at the universe from within the universe, and it's not right to look at it outside the universe. That's like saying, you know, if you're looking at Microsoft Windows, you have to look within the Microsoft Windows for the source of Microsoft Windows. Now, if you're a program within Microsoft Windows, you couldn't possibly understand Microsoft Windows except if you looked outside the program to Bill Yates. There is, on another level itself, dimension, the source comes, the origin comes. Going back to the embryos, lastly. So it's unfair to compare the two-dimensional pictures of these things. It's the genetics we need to look at. And this particular picture, you know, the fact that they look similar is irrelevant. The key issue is the ability to infer genetic relationship between two species to prove genetic mutations led to a more complex form coming from a less complex form. The appearance is deceptive, partly because similarity of structure does not imply necessarily an identical genetic heritage. And even as evolutionists will admit that the example behind is a mammal and a fish, completely different genetics, and there.